right. So an abbreviated version of zero trust, why and how. So I was able to hear all of Calvin's talk, and I saw some of the going back and forth talking about German shepherds, et cetera, in the chat. So I'll open up the same thing. I'm kind of over in my peripheral looking at the chat here now as well. So if you have any questions, put really big letters, all caps question, and put the question, and I'll try to catch it and jump on it immediately. Hold on. Interesting. Even my clicker now works. So very quickly, a why is it important? Followed by what are the priorities? This is one of the big questions I get with zero trust a lot. Followed by kind of a high level strategy for deploying those next steps. I am going to bounce around somewhat because of the time constraints and because of technology being so amazing today. But nonetheless, let me go start here very, very quickly. It's my least favorite part of any talk I do. As a nerd, I hate talking about myself, but nonetheless, to build credibility, I guess I got to say this. More than 20 years in cybersecurity. I'm one of the weird ones that has only been in cybersecurity for most of my career. It's literally the kind of the only thing I've ever done. I had maybe a year or two where I was a Novell, what were they called? CNE, if I remember correctly, like a certified network expert or something like that. But I didn't like that. I've always wanted to do security. More than 30 years ago, security wasn't really profitable. So I was doing Novell and then eventually Exchange, and then, vice versa, first Microsoft server and then Exchange, etc. But I was always, very cybersecurity centric. Since then, security obviously, quote, took off. So I've built, operated security practices at scale. The last place I worked, I was responsible for about a 500-person security team. I was responsible for operational excellence and efficiency, and that included the SOC, that included the innovations office, it included big parts of the CIO office as well, because networking fell under my purview also. So that's me. That's what I bring to the table, and the perspective that you hear here is less of a vendor perspective and more of a practitioner perspective. I've spent many years being a pen tester, actively penetrating networks, breaking them, doing red teaming, et cetera, et cetera. So that's you should hear that somewhat if you read in between the lines of what I'm saying. So I do want to talk a couple of minutes quickly on why. Why are we even talking about this? And obviously you always hear this, and some of it's FUD. I've taken out the FUD-ish type slides. There used to be these slides going around with, there's, gazillions of bad things or malware or attacks or whatever have you, and X amount of new attacks per day. I'm not going in that, but what I will say is, obviously, industries are targeted pretty much across the board. This statistic here I thought was very interesting. For the first time in probably 5-6 years that I can remember, and anyone can chime in on this. Ooh, the deck is small. Can I fit it to the screen? I'm not gonna mess with it, bro. I see the comment. I agree. It looks small now that I'm looking at my screen share on my side too. On my side, it is fully expanded, but for whatever reason, the app is constraining it. I'm afraid to touch it. It might explode everything. So apologies, but I will share the deck. So as soon as the call is done, I'll gladly share the deck in PDF form to everyone. There's nothing confidential in here. Nonetheless, back to this. Thanks, Matthew. Back to this. What I thought was interesting here, for the first time in about 5-ish years or so, we're seeing that banking is no longer the most attacked space. We're seeing a lot of increasing attacks. So this doesn't say which space was the most attacked, but for the first time, banking wasn't the one that had the most growth in attacks. If you're tracking the statistic I'm trying to draw your attention to there, we're seeing it change, and other industries are seeing increasing attacks. That's a big deal. So it's regardless to the industry you're in, your industry is probably under significantly increasing attacks. And reasons for that are, for example, ICS. A lot of environments, manufacturing, retail, medical, like very broadly education, are trying to do this overlap of OT and IT. And a lot of them are struggling with, hey, how do we actually put a security and a risk policy in place that addresses OT as well as IT. And OT, I mean operational technology, IT, information technology. And we're more comfortable with the IT space. We talk about things like patching, and you got to make sure you're well patched, et cetera, et cetera. OT, a lot of that doesn't carry over. And what a lot of companies try to do is take those IT technologies and IT principles, strategies, and carte blanche, apply them to OT. We'll delve a little deeper into that. The other thing we're seeing, and this I've tried to footnote my slides. You'll be able to dig into those footnotes yourself. It's all very publicly available information, but you really got to dig actively for it. But what we're seeing is a trend where you're no longer seeing simply increase in attacks, carte blanche. You're seeing now denial of service type attacks increasing significantly. And you're also seeing the motives change. Motives were very strongly espionage for a long while. We're actually seeing espionage for the first time, and this is very, very current, obviously, it's end of 2022, where for the first time we're seeing espionage dip strongly while financial motives are increasing. So then you start seeing stuff like, a lot of these ransomware attacks, and this is not going to be one of those, oh my God, ransomware is the end of the world, quick, here's a ransomware widget that'll solve your ransomware problem. I think ransomware is a small problem, a small part of a bigger systemic problem that we see in cybersecurity. And that's kind of what we'll touch on today. This is something I like to share. And this resonates like gangbusters with customers. So hence, I did this today, this morning, and I'm sharing it with you. Overall internet exposure today. And there's some key data I want to, kind of highlight on this. Sure, most of you as technical people have seen this type of data before. Like I said, this was grabbed this morning just before 7 a.m. Central Time. I'm in Dallas, Texas. What I want, and I hope this works. Oh, it does work right there. I want to draw your attention to that right there, CVE 2015 2004, which is kind of Heartbleed-esque affiliated CVE. What's interesting about that is notice how old it is. The most attacked, leveraged, exploited is the word I'm looking for, vulnerability out in the internet today. And this is consistent for probably the last 30 or 40 days, is a what is that, 4 or 5, 7, like a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, something like that, 7-year-old CVE. That's so it's they're not leveraging hey, this is 0 day, and 0 days are still a thing, they still do happen, but some of the biggest attacks that we're seeing and the most volume, like the loudest, the highest scale of attacks are in very, very, very old attacks, as well as even here, SMB. We're still finding 91 or so, I can't read the numbers because it's now constrained on my side as well, but 91 or so % of devices out on the internet are still publishing SMB v1 publicly on the outside internet. We're also seeing Eternal Blue. You know how old Eternal Blue is? Like that was this NSA thing that was released, that allows remote code execution. It was a big part of NotPetya. Like that's ancient. Why is this still being why is this still so prevalent in our environment? And my suggestion to you is it's because our approach to security has a lot of gaps in it, and the attackers see those gaps and they leverage them. And one of the easiest, least most cost-effective ways, least expensive ways to leverage this is using pre-existing vulnerabilities that are out there. So this is kind of the big picture as to the why. Fast forwarding now, I want to give you one last real world example. So this happened on the 16th of January. I'm sure if you are tuned to any threat scape type feeds, threat feeds. You got this. CISA ordered all agencies to patch, all federal government agencies to patch by January 31. So that was a 2-week window they gave them. If you understand the federal government, you understand how big of a deal that is. That's, you know, how bad they said it must be. I did a check again this morning, and I was looking in the central part of the US, Detroit, that type of an area. Still 1,300 nodes vulnerable to this specific CVE. Specifically, there were actual servers that I was able to find with RDP exposed today that still had vulnerabilities to this thing. I even went so far as to, you know, pull a screenshot, take a screenshot of one of the login screens of the servers. I think I cut off the part that says the domain that it's a part of, but if this is familiar to you, the naming I had one person I showed it to this morning was like, wait a second, I think I recognize that naming convention. That might be my environment, but you know, it is what it is. So hopefully that company is not on here, so you don't feel, you know, too picked on. But I'm saying that to say our environments are sprawling. We're doing things like moving to the cloud, et cetera, but we haven't structured our security approach. Zero trust is an approach that allows you to say, we are going to do security that's pervasive across the board, literally from soup to nuts. So it tries to give you visibility into all aspects of your IT and OT environments in order for you to, you know, provide better security and better protection. So how do we do that? So all of that was the why, and, you know, the how dangerous it is, et cetera. Now I want to talk a little bit about priorities. As a matter of fact, I'll take a step back. The reason why, and did anyone ask this question yet? Typically, when the slides are really visible, by now I'll see questions popping up in the Q&A space about, you know, okay, great, this is awesome, let's do zero trust. What are the areas I should tackle first? You know, and there's always very political / religious debate around what to do first. I've heard some people be very, very adamant. I shared a panel with a CISO of a large bank up in the Northeast recently, and he was like adamant about it. You know, if you don't nail down identity, you can't do any of this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. I said to him, hey, dude, you know, it's true. I agree with you. Identity is super important. But what if you are a vehicle manufacturer? You know, what if you are GM or Ford, and your biggest risk is not the identity centric IT environments? Your significantly bigger loss leader and, you know, risk, and where you have zero risk appetite, is what you call don't break. So, you know, the car manufacturers internally say this all the time: you can't break a build. That means while a car is going through the manufacturing process, that manufacturing process cannot stop. Like if it stops for 10 seconds, because it's all automated, it's all robotics, it's all, you know, assembly line type stuff. If that stops for a couple of seconds, the entire thing stops. The whole line has to be reset. And that costs them, one of the auto manufacturers gave me a number, something along the lines of $13 or $14 million per second, that a specific line, like where they're probably building one of their, you know, highly in demand SUVs or something like that, if that line stops per second, it costs them $13 million. There is no identity in there. Like that's all OT based technology. So I say all that to say you can't apply simple paradigms from a priority perspective and say you always got to do identity first, you always got to do this first, you always got to do that first. No, I'm going to suggest today a different approach to take. 3 areas to prioritize. First is managing cyber risks in complex environments. Second is security efficacy and efficiency. Third is automation. So let's dive a little bit deeper into those 3 acts. You know what? Let me pause for a hot second. Thoughts. I'm going to also take a drink because my throat is parched. Thoughts, questions, comments. Throw them up in the chat while I'm taking a sip. If not, I'll continue as soon as this is done. Awesome. Let's boogie. So part 1, managing cyber risk in complex borderless environments. The thing we're trying to address here, and it's super difficult to read on the tiny screen, even for me it is, how do you manage risk And the first question you want to start asking yourself on this zero trust journey is, where is your risk the highest and where is your risk appetite the lowest? In other words, you have risk all over the place. Where can you not tolerate risk? For some environments, that's going to be identity. For some environments, that's going to be the app space. For some environments, that's going to be infrastructure space. You're more concerned about how the data is flowing across your networks, your OT, your IT, et cetera, networks. Some, it's going to be users, application, infrastructure. It could be wherever. You pick the one where your risk appetite is the lowest, where if something goes bad there, it affects you the most, and it probably has trickle-down effects into other environments, and that's the place that you're going to do. What from us, and I'm going to, hold on, right-click on slide. Yep, that already is a different option than you thought. More, maybe. Nope. Not looking like you expected. Sorry. Appreciate the suggestion though, Sean. Back to what I was saying. I'm gonna try to balance, kind of do a polemic of what we should do and what the cybersecurity industry is. The industry problem we have here is we have made our cybersecurity environment so complicated that we can't quickly manage risk. The environments themselves are complicated. The cybersecurity stuff on top of those environments is even more complicated. So rather than our cybersecurity tools helping complexity, they've actually contributed to the complexity problem. Therefore, my question here is, how many point products do you have in your environment? If you have, and again, one of the banks that is my customer, and I speak to them probably on a monthly basis, they're using still 27 agents on every single endpoint, and they have hundreds of thousands of endpoints. That is not tenable. Now they have a SOC of several thousand people, shifts around the globe, cycles 24/7, always going 365. Most environments don't have the budget or the capacity for that. But I can tell you, those financial services companies that are at that scale, they struggle with this as well. Like, they're not happy. They are actively trying to figure out, how do we get a better grasp on our cybersecurity stuff? Oh, thank you, Sean. How do we get a better grasp on our cybersecurity stuff so that it no longer becomes a contributing factor to our problem, but it becomes a solution to our problem? So the second priority area would be maximizing security efficacy, and operational efficiency. So we need to be able to do quicker and more efficiently blocking, identification of threats, identification of attacks, indicators of attacks, etc., and efficiently being able to not only detect it, but mitigate it. The big debate in security for a very long time has been best of breed or get a platform. I think that question, is being answered in real time because of what we're seeing in the threat space, whether it's transportation, oil and gas, insurance, financials, retail, medical, etc. They are, and I'll give you a link to a Gartner report that talks about this. I don't usually like Gartner reports. I think Gartner reports are okay. They're very biased, and there's, it's not it's not the best model, but in some cases, in all cases, there's good, valuable data in there. So I'll share a link. It'll be part of the slides that you'll be able to pull down and get an entire report on, this whole debate and question on, should we go platform or should we go best of breed? Whatever you're doing, if you noticed from Calvin's talk beforehand, a lot of the talk was around, how do we actually start building this automation? Are we going to have to write scripts? Are we going to have to do this? Are we going to have to use UI? Like, how do we actually do that? That is central, not the how, but the fact that that is the conversation piece is central to what I'm trying to position here. If you are not looking at your environment and assessing how you can better operationally make everything efficient, so 1 click versus 12 clicks, you're missing one of the priorities you should have. Your priority shouldn't be, hey, ransomware is an issue. Let me get the latest, greatest, hottest, sexiest ransomware mitigation tools specifically for Windows laptops, or specifically for Windows computers, and maybe Mac OS as well. And, that'll at least help me with the ransomware problem. No, it actually contributes to your operational efficiency problem. It makes it worse. It doesn't contribute in a positive sense. And therefore, we need to change our approach to how we look at that. That needs to be a key part of your zero trust approach. Someone, Katie, maybe, how am I doing on time? I've completely lost track of time, and there's some key things that I don't want to miss. Just type it in the chat, or you say it. Say it. Go ahead, Katie.
You're good. About 15 minutes.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's exactly what I needed. I needed a number. I hear your German Shepherd is still barking in the background. Awesome.
Sorry about that. How much time you had.
Yeah, no apology needed for that. Dogs are awesome. I don't have one anymore, but dogs are awesome. Cats are better. So priority number 3 would be automation. And again, that's the first part of the conversation that Calvin, went very deep into from a technical perspective. But that is absolutely where we want to be spending a lot of time as well. A quick use case of that is, we drink our own champagne here at Palo. Our SOC is now optimized almost to perfection, I would say. We have a SOC of, I think it's 7 people, 12 people or something like that for a company with, 15 or 20,000, zero trust indeed. Yes, sir, Jeff. For a company with, that's highly focused like us, worth billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, if not more. It's notable that our mean time to response is as short as it is, and that's heavily leveraging automation. And that is, a part of, if you have a security infrastructure that is truly based on zero trust, then you can do these types of things. So that's kind of the priorities section. I want to just quickly review that. Review the 3 of them again. Manage your cyber risk. So break complexity, make sure operational efficiency is better, and leverage automation. The 3 things should point towards that. Like, if you want to do zero trust in your environment, it's not about, hey, let me go and buy this zero trust widget. That's awesome. And if I just plug this one widget in, yeah, because there's lots of vendors that try to sell that pipe dream to you. And I promise you, it is a pipe dream. If anyone from Palo ever tells you, yeah, just buy our product X, and then you'll have zero trust, run the opposite direction. That is not what zero trust is. So a couple of slides, boom. Palo, now I wanted to give you this, high level strategic approach to, okay, you've decided, you've set your priorities, you want to go. What is the strategic approach to deploying zero trust in your environment? There's 3 aspects to it. I like breaking stuff up into simple bullet point lists, 1, 2, 3, or maybe 5 tops. In this case, it's 3. We break zero trust up in, first of all, zero trust is a strategic approach to how you defend a network. It's not a product. It's not a series of products that connect together and are integrated. It is it's a strategic, high-level overview. So that's part 1. The 3 aspects to zero trust that we believe define zero trust are: 1, securing users. So that means identity is a part of it. Remember, we had that whole debate about, is identity important? It absolutely is. Is it the place you absolutely unequivocally have to start? If users is where your risk appetite is the least, then yes, the user space you might need to focus on identity. Palo doesn't have anything in the identity space. We don't have a dog to hunt there. We don't have a horse in the race. So we're not trying to pitch anything aggressively in the user space, but we are saying, once you have your users identified, you have your devices and your workloads identified, and you can vouch for their integrity. And that's what identity is: the ability to say this user and this device is who they say they are, and they're doing what they say they do. Zero trust says you now give them the least amount of access that they can get to get the job done. And then the key paradigm, and I want you to pay attention to this, like stick a mental pin in it, because this is going to reoccur over and over as we define a strategy for zero trust. You need to be able to assess, scan all of the activity that access that we just granted, the minimal access, gives that user and that device that we've just validated, to make sure that the activity that is happening is actually valid, allowable activity. I heard a great analogy of this. Think of it as using a boarding pass to get access to the secure area of an airport. It's not the way we've looked at zero trust and cybersecurity is often, listen, we have identity. Nowadays, we also look at the device. And once we have device and identity, and we've asserted this person is who they say they are, we let them run rampant. You got access, you could do what you need to do. Your work is getting done. Awesome. Again, parallel to the analogy of walking into an airport. If you take your board, if I, as TSA security, allow you with your boarding pass to get past TSA security and say, you know what, you're in. We know that's you. We've checked your ID. We've checked your boarding pass. You're allowed to be here. Supposed to be leaving today. Go ahead and have fun. And I never check you again. I never check your gate. I never check what you're doing. I don't have cameras around. I could run rampant and bedlam will ensue in an airport. Not only may I possibly get on the wrong plane, but I could do nefarious bad things because I have passed your security checkpoints because you've been able to identify me. That transaction part at the end that I'm talking about now, that part right there says, even after we've given a user security and access, we still don't trust them. We still have to keep assessing their transactions. What are they doing now that they're here? You're starting to get the idea that without automation and without the three priorities that we just spoke about, this is quickly going to grow out of the ability to be able to execute on it. So, and this was only one of three. Let's go to two. Two of three is you also need to secure applications. If you are app dev house, and I'll give I like to give real world use cases from the customers that I speak to, because that's what I do. I speak to big organizations almost on a daily basis. So I'm sharing with you the lessons that they have learned or the things that we have walked through together. A lot of organizations now that formerly would never have considered themselves app development houses are entering that space. We saw that, for example, a real world example would be CVS, the pharmacy company. Around the block, everywhere, you see CVS stores all over the places. You often see Walgreens right across the street from them, at least here in Texas where I live. So, very pervasive, very popular. Then we had a pandemic a couple of years ago and everyone shut down and everyone stayed home. What did CVS do? I'm sure you read about and probably visited CVS stores where you were using your CVS app to schedule a COVID test appointment or COVID vaccine appointment later on, and you were pulling up to the CVS drive-thrus that were not designed for testing people in, leveraging your app. Or I remember in the beginning when they even had you do it out in a like a tent outside of the store because whatever. They just weren't, no one was sure about, what was happening with COVID yet. So they were being extra safe. But the point is, CVS switched from being a retail healthcare organization. They were actively an app development house. They quickly had to come up with the idea for we're going to schedule appointments and assign people to locations and do the geo tracking to fit. Because like in Texas, to get a COVID vaccine, I drove several hours, 4 or 5 or 6 hours or something like that, because CVS told me the nearest place that had availability that wasn't, booked up for 3 weeks was, like East Texas, somewhere out in the freaking sticks, the boonies. So, that is how they leveraged app development to become effectively an app dev house versus a retail store. If that in any way, shape, or form describes you and your environment is starting to switch into more app dev, maybe app dev is where you start your zero trust journey. And again, key was going to be identity. Who are your developers? Who are the validated workload owners? So they could be service accounts as well that can run and develop and distribute and operate applications in your environment. Same principle as with users just now. Determine the workload, the service, the microservice, the Docker instance, whatever have you, that identity is allowed to function on, and then grant them least access. And again, transactions. Again, you got to, even after you've trusted them, even after you have tools deployed on the workloads that ensure that the workloads are doing the right things and using the right resources, not pulling a Docker container that has vulnerabilities like Heartbleed. Remember the graph that I showed with the current threats that we're seeing out. And the reason that continues being pervasive is because you might have developers that are leveraging tool sets or Docker images or Docker containers that have vulnerabilities built into them. They get the job done. They're doing the need that that developer has, but without controls in place at an application level that treat applications as an aspect of the zero trust deployment approach, there's a gap. So again, transactional assurance, that's the term we like to apply here, is absolutely unequivocally important as zero trust. And then the third and final part, and I'm gonna wrap up here and ask questions, allow some Q&A time. The third and final part is, what if your environment is heavily focused on infrastructure? What if you still have a lot of buildings with physical network infrastructure in them, or even if you're widely remote and you have remote users all over the place, so your infrastructure edge has thinned out significantly, but it's been dispersed more? And then maybe securing infrastructure with zero trust is important. And the paradigms remain similar, not exactly the same, but similar. Identity is key again. Device and workload, part of identity. And I want to take note here, that includes IoT, which includes OT. So if there are things on your environment that you can't just put a firewall in or put a firewall in front of, or quote unquote patch, you still need a way to A, be aware that they're on a part of your network, and B, implement controls on them that allow us to do the next two steps, which is access, again, least privilege, as well as transactional. So scan all of, for infrastructure, obviously from a Palo Alto Networks perspective, that is kind of our panacea. That's our strong, that was our, welcome to the party, new prom outfit. We were always the bosses at, next gen firewalls and being able to assess traffic all the way through layer 7, et cetera, et cetera. That heritage is what we are leveraging here to talk about transactional assurance. But you can imagine in the app space, it's completely different. You're using different type of tool sets with the same idea. And in the user space, obviously, you're leveraging completely different type of tool sets with the same idea as well. So I would say those are three overarching strategic approaches that you can use in your environment starting immediately after you have determined your priorities first. So first prioritize, then deploy these strategies. And even while you're deploying whichever one of these strategies comes first, whether it be applications, users, or infrastructure, keep in mind that you're purposefully driving towards wherever it is your environment is going. So even if you start with infrastructure, you're still driving towards applications, you're still driving towards users. If you start with users, vice versa, the same thing. The approach that you're holistically looking at the broad picture, that is what zero trust is all about. And that is the strategy that I would suggest you deploy. Let me skip some of these slides. This is just diving deeper into it. I will still provide those slides to you. I promised a couple of things. This is one. This will be in the deck, so don't bother to try to take a screenshot or anything. This is my connect if you want to reach out. And more importantly, this is the Gartner report that I was talking about, where they discuss consolidation and platform security of the future, as well as zero trust. The key to us improving what we have in the cybersecurity space and the kind of kludgy glued together with matchsticks and duct tape security space we've built. And I say that with a lot of love. Like I said at the beginning, cybersecurity is the only thing I've ever done professionally, even when it was not beneficial. Like there was a long period of time where I could not feed my family doing cybersecurity. Like you'd walk up to businesses, hey, let me do your cybersecurity. Dude, my IT guy does my cybersecurity. Or, cybersecurity, why? And, then all of a sudden Home Depot and Target get hacked over Thanksgiving. And then everyone's asking about cybersecurity and suddenly it becomes a little bit viable. But there was long periods of time where you did this thing for the love of it. So I say that we have built a jacked up environment with all love and admiration, and knowing that this is the only industry that I've ever been a part of that I have no desire of leaving anytime in the very near future. We got to do better. We, as practitioners and professionals in the space, we have to undo this kind of a soup we've made where it's the only industry, the only technological software type industry where we leave the integration up to the integration for bare basic functionality. We leave that up to the customer to do. Like, if I were to say, hey, I want a car, and I go to Ford, and Ford tells me, well, we got the chassis for you, and your job now is go and find a motor you want, and a transmission, and tires, and wheels, and seats. No one would buy cars. Like, we would literally say, frickin' Ford, GM, whoever came up with that, you guys are on crack. Have a nice day. Bye. But that is effectively what we have done in cybersecurity. We've built a bunch of tools. Go to RSA any year, and you'll see them. The RSA Expo floor keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And we've built a bunch of tools, and we leave it up to the customer to figure out how is tool A going to measure it, going to work with tool B. We as professionals, I got to stress on that, need to figure out a way to break that. And the way we do that, zero trust strategy, prioritization, and start pointing towards a consolidated platform. Now, I know that seems, and there's other slides. I was going to say, let me pull this up quickly, but I can't because I rebooted my computer trying to get the audio to work. But there were other slides where like CISOs and CIOs and the customers I talk to, and I'm talking about Bank of America, Capital One Bank, GM, Ford, CVS, Walgreens. These are like, this is the scale of customers I talk to on a daily basis. And the CISOs and CIOs and CTOs of those companies are saying they're done with the best of breed type approach. They absolutely unequivocally see the bet they're making is that if they can't figure out how to do this in a consolidated platform from whoever the vendor of choice will be, is irrelevant. Like, you can do that with Palo. You can also do that with Microsoft. You can also do that with, Cisco. Like, CrowdStrike is working on that right now. So I'm not saying you have to get it from Palo, but I am saying as practitioners in this space, start thinking about, hey, how do I not just tell my organization, the company that I work for, go buy a car by finding the wheels you like, the chair you like, the motor and the transmission you like, and then we'll figure out how to glue it together. That doesn't work anymore. And for that reason, I'm gonna shut up. That's not really for that reason, and now I'm gonna shut up and do some Q&A. As I promised, I will share whatever needed. So Katie, how are we doing? How are we looking? Tell your puppy hi for me.
We are doing good. So if anyone has any more questions, they can throw them into the chat. And like Gregory said, both recordings will be available on the website as well as their presentations. We'll send an email out when that's ready. But if anyone, let Gregory know if you have any other questions at this time. Okay. Gregory, did you have any more comments? It looks like you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I now have unmuted. I saw no Q&A questions directly in Q&A. I'll chill out here on the general chat for a minute until you tell me otherwise, Katie. But yeah, I think we're good unless someone drops a question there. Thanks everyone for attending.